What's good, everybody? It's Big Game James, man. I'm back in the building. I'm back in these streets, back in these work streets. Just thought I'd do a quick video before I jump in here at work. Obviously, there's been some good news on the Cowboys front. On the defensive side, a lot of people have been calling for these positions to be filled, and it looks like the Cowboys finally stepped up and did that. I've been pretty vocal, along with a lot of other people, about the defensive tackle help. Obviously, Mozzie has looked better than he looked last year, but in my opinion, it's still not reliable. It's still not. You can't depend on it. You start seeing a little bit of upside, the hand placement, the movements. Zimmer and Coach Z really been working with him, and you really like where. Well, I'm not gonna say you really like what you see, but you see the improvement. But it's not enough improvement, in my opinion, for them to feel like they were okay at defensive tackle. They had Carl Davis. Carl Davis is a big boy, a run stuffer. Pretty much that is it. But he's been pretty, his whole career. And then you had the Justin Rogers pick. He's a seventh round rookie. I just couldn't trust that. I just can't roll with the season with the Mozzie, Carl Davis, and Justin Rogers as your guys. And then they picked up the Huggins kid, Higgins or Huggins, whatever the hell his name is. And he might already be getting cut, pushing staffers down and shit. So that could be one that's already gone. I think Shaka Tony was already being released. He was a defensive end. I didn't think he was going to have anything. The Muhammad kid, I didn't think he had anything. And I've been pretty vocal with once you lost Dorrance Armstrong Jr., once you lost Dante Fowler, and then you lost Sam Williams, you needed help because I didn't see it from Fehoko. Obviously, we like what Marshawn Nealon is doing. He's showing a lot of potential early, but I still don't think he's the biggest pass rusher as far as you getting the sacks. He may get the pressures, but I don't know if he's going to be a high sack guy. So Cowboys needed another guy in the rotation. The guys that they had were a lot of undrafted guys, Tyrus Wheat, those guys that didn't really see, especially in this game against the Rams. I just didn't see any pressure. I mentioned that on Twitter. I didn't see the pressure, and I felt like they got to address that. We all thought they were going to go after Carl Lawrence. They didn't do it, and then now they did the circle round and came back and scooped him. So the Cowboys pick up Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle from the Buffalo Bills, and defensive end Carl Lawson. Now, the reason why I will say I am happy about that is because Jordan Phillips, me and my dog Boss Cowboys, we was on the Jordan Phillips train 3 years ago, 2019 Buffalo Bills. They had beat Dallas. He made a lot of enemies in Dallas when he was making fun of the Zeke doing the like that. A lot of people took offense to it. I took offense to it just because that's my team, and you don't want no team coming in and kicking your ass and then talking shit about it. You don't want to hear that. But when he became a free agent, or when he was coming up free agency, Boss Cowboys had him number one as far as his top free agent to go after. At this point in time, I think he was like 26 or 27 years old. I was on that train instantly. When they played Dallas, I was like, you need to get him. That was his career high year in sacks. He did like 9.5 sacks that year. I think he had his most tackles he had his whole career in one season. And his highest sack total by far. I think his next highest total was 3.5 sacks, so that was his year. And he was affordable. I think he went to the Cardinals. I thought he was affordable. And if you look at going from 2019 to 2020, Dallas didn't have nobody on that front like that. They didn't have nobody that can really do that. 6'6", 330 pounds, 335 pounds. And he plays really angry. Some people say play a little dirty. We saw the Eagles game, but I ain't mad at him chirping and talking shit and running his mouth. I want a guy in the trenches that does all that, because you got to play that. You in trench warfare, like my dog B Tuck says. That's trench warfare. So a guy like that, I wanted him 3 years ago. We could have had him on the squad in 2020 when he was in his 20s. I let him come off that career year with Buffalo and came right over with us because Dallas needed defensive help. You saw Mike Nolan. Our defense was one of the worst defenses that year. And I think Jordan Phillips could have been a great addition. Cowboys don't ever want to pay that money. They want to wait till you are cheaper, older, and maybe more injuries. So now Jordan Phillips, I think, is around 30 years old. They circle back after 3 years, just like they did Jonathan Hankins when I said get him. Anthony Barr said get him. I said Everson Griffith, get him. Robert Quinn, I said get him. All these guys I mentioned, even the kid Evans, linebacker, I said go get him too. All before the curve, before any four of the teams were talking about it, I was already on Twitter and my spaces talking about these are guys that should get. And Cowboys got each one of them. They do the circle back, but they got each one of them. So for me, first the Jordan Phillips pick, that is a pick for, to me, insurance. I don't feel like he's going to be a guy that's going to come in and be dominant. Okay, I don't think that. I don't think he's we got Jordan Phillips, now the whole game changed. We are a championship team now. I don't see that. But what I do see is a guy who's a good rotational piece, who's a veteran, who's nasty, who can get after the quarterback, and who can rest Mozzie, who can spell Mozzie, who can spell a Carl Davis, who can spell a Justin Rogers if he's on the active roster. But this is a guy right now where you don't have to feel like you have to play Mozzie all these god-awful snaps, and then he wears down, and toward the end of the game, you're seeing him wearing down, and then you're getting pushed around. The team is running all over us in the third and fourth quarters because that's when it happens with the Dallas Cowboys. So now you got a stout big boy, 6'6", 325, big dog. Obviously only had like 2.5 sacks last year. He was with the Giants, but they had a lot of young players on the team, and it just looked like it was a numbers game. So shout out to the Cowboys. They flipped a 6 for a 7, a 7 for a 6, and then they got a much needed defensive tackle help, much needed. So I really am. I like that pick. But I'm going to keep it real. I've already mentioned how Dallas Cowboys should. Jonathan Allen, I'm going to still stay on that train. Everybody's like, Dan Quinn wouldn't trade a player within the division. He wouldn't do that. Picks and players change those thoughts, in my opinion. Jonathan Allen, I wanted him for the last couple of years, but I really wanted him last year after he had that rant and he went off and he was pissed off and mad and he was telling everybody about it. I was like, that's the kind of dude I want on the team. Obviously, in my opinion, they would wait till you get older, but it's here for the taking. I looked at Kevin Gray, said Cowboys have a plethora of picks, not the compensatory, but they have a plethora of picks that they'll have available for next year. And you got a stacked up safety room. Safety was one of the biggest sore spots for the Cowboys for years and years and years. Now you got plethora of safeties. So right now you could really freak one of those guys and a pick and get a Jonathan Allen. I don't know about that. Would they trade him in the division? I don't know that. But if you already got a young bunch of talent and the Cowboys offer you a player and a pick, a good, reasonable pick, I see that be hard to be turned down. So I'm still on the Jonathan Allen train until it's totally knocked off. I'm on that train until it's totally knocked off. So I'm just going to keep talking about it, put it in the air. So I just feel like that's a good pick for Dallas with Jordan Phillips. And then you talk about Carl Lawson. We know he's the guy that stays hurt. He had an Achilles injury when he was in college. He had some nicks and bumps and bruises when he was in Cincinnati. And then I believe when he went over to the Jets, he missed the whole 21 season because of a torn Achilles. Came back, played 17 games, started, and then last year only played 6. So the injury bug is still prevalent with him. But the big thing about what Carl Lawson is, he don't got to come in and be no savior. He don't got to come in and get 30, 40 snaps in a game. He don't have to get all those snaps. And in my opinion, he could be like the Dante Fowler, be that part-time guy where Fowler came in part-time. And you saw what he did. 5 sacks, 6 sacks. I mean, he was very effective in his part-time work, and I think that's where Carl Lawson can really be effective with the Cowboys. You got D-Law, you got Michael Parsons, right? You got Marshawn Nealon, a rookie. Now, if you got a Carl Lawson, who's somebody who you don't have to worry about depending on and being that guy, he can come in and really turn up in that spot duty. And I think that's where it'll really help Dallas, the spot duty, the depth and the spot duty. And you have a guy that can really challenge offensive linemen and really challenge to get into that quarterback. That's what the Cowboys need. And I appreciate them looking out for Coach Zim. They made the trade with Nashawn Wright for Andrew Booth. So they're having some Mike Zimmer in mind. So I think right there, because he's already had familiarity with the program and the organization back in the 90s, they're going to give him probably a little bit more than they would Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, like Boss said, he came out as an orphan. He came from an outsider. Mike Zimmer is an insider. So I would think maybe they like, hey, Mike Zimmer is one of us, so we definitely going to do whatever we can to get him. And plus, Mike Zimmer's on a 1-year deal. So you can't really tell your coach to make miracles and do all these miracles on a 1-year deal, and you're not helping them out. So you went and traded and got a corner, a better corner than you had. You went and traded and got a defensive tackle better than the defensive tackles you have on the squad. And then you got a defensive end who has proven himself in the league, shown he can definitely do it. And he doesn't have to be the main guy. So the Cowboys, I feel like, had more love for Zimmer than a Dan Quinn, because he was actually with the program. And you know how the Cowboys are. They love homegrown talent. They love their own. They don't like the outsiders. And so I feel like Zimmer's more of an insider. So maybe they're helping him more on that front. So I'm excited about that as far as that point. I like what they're doing. I'll still love to see them still go out there and get aggressive and make that trade, because you can still do it. You can still add. But for now, both of these guys are like around 29, 30 years old. So they're not at least 35, 36 years old. And, Linville Joseph is still being talked about. I think he's a player you can still get. He's hella old, 36. Played last year, I believe, with the Eagles. But you don't need him to be the main guy. You don't need him to be the guy that's doing this and doing that 20 snaps. You can get him as a guy that can come in as a good rotational piece and a big boy that can clog the middle. That's the main thing you need to stop the run. Big boys. So we'll see what happens on this front with Dak and CD. I'm not going to get too much in that. I would think now things will be expedited, because you got the guys that you kind of needed. You still need a running back, a guy with speed. But you would think that they would go hard and get this CD Dak thing done. I said they don't do 2 mega deals before the season starts. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think one deal at least gets signed. For some reason, I don't feel like it's Dak. I feel like it would be more CD, because I feel like they don't really mess with that organization over there with Dak's people and his agent. They just don't deal with him, and they just have problems with him. And I feel like that's just going to be the problem. Whereas CD, maybe it's a little bit more negotiable and they can work a little bit. So I would say, if anything, I would say CD got signed first before Dak Prescott. I would think it'd be the other way around, but it is what it is with this organization. You already know about that, so I ain't going to get too much into that. But for my stance, I'm going to go ahead and say this is like a B as far as the grade right now, because you actually brought in 2 quality guys. You didn't bring in some no-names. You didn't bring in some orphans. You didn't bring in some guys who were like, what? What are you bringing him in for? He ain't doing nothing. When you brought Muhammad in, when you brought Higgins in, when you brought Tony in, that didn't hype nobody up. But at least right here, we feel like you're getting semi-serious when you get some guys like this. They're not movers and shakers, but they are better than what you brought in before. And we were all looking at the Cowboys run. I was like, what the hell is this? So at least I will look at it and say, from that point, that's cool. We'll see how it goes from this point. But I do say this like a B, low B, a B, but I'm going to stay in that B range, because these guys have played in the league. These guys have made some noise in the league, and these guys are good veterans, and these guys aren't just cast-offs. And so that would give me a little bit more hope for what's going to happen in this 2024-25 season. So that's pretty much it from my end. About to head back into work. Make sure you tune in for the Big Star Show. That's going to be a good show. Me and Star are going to get into it about some things and have a good time. So make sure you tune in at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's get it, man. Big Game James, I'm out. Peace.